it's about persistence. So, and I actually think it was Ryan Smith with Qualtrics. He said the same thing about, like, be all in.
Mm,
So if you're doing this, be all in, all the way, but also be persistent in what you're doing. And if you do run into some roadblocks and they're legitimate roadblocks,
mm.
evaluate that. Maybe you're not on the right course, and maybe you need to make some adjustments. And however that happens, um, yeah, just keep at it. Keep at it. And if it is something that is legitimately a great thing that will help whatever market you're in or industry, then you'll see results. But that persistence has to be there, and you have to be all in.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that has grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as a CEO and founder of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. And today we have another great guest on the episode, Jared Porter. And Jared, just to give you a
Hello.
Hey, Jared. Give you a brief introduction on Jared. He lived in suburbia for a period of time, and then his dad decided he was going to go off and teach at the Navajo reservation. So that's where Jared went to school for a period of time. Then he went to LSU, and then after that, worked at some blue collar jobs. Most of the time he was going to school. Came out of school. Served a religious mission in Italy, got married, had 2 kids, and started working at a national benefits company on 401ks. Went over to Transamerica before jumping over to where he's at today. So there's a brief introduction or overview of Jared's journey. But welcome to the podcast, Jared.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Just one slight correction on that. I went to Utah State University, so USU,
Oh,
not
I had it
LSU.
as LSU. It should be.
Although
Well, that's even
LSU,
worse. Utah State University.
although
Then
LSU
you're
did
more of a
clobber
rival to
USU.
BYU.
Yeah, they did, and those 2 kids have now grown to. I now have 6 kids, so that's a
Ah,
slight
all right.
change
So there's
upgrade.
even more kids and went to a different school. I was reasonably
You were
close.
you got most of it, so I'll give you
All
that.
right. Well,
But
now
yeah.
that you've corrected me, let's go back into your journey. Start out. Kind of tell us how you got into going with your dad going you to the Navajo reservation, and let's pick up from there.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't expect something like that to happen. You have your set of friends, you're used to things. It's almost like you have your habitual things that you're accustomed to, and then your dad wants to change things up, and you move. And so I went to high school in the Navajo Nation um, area, and so Monument Valley. So
Hmm.
like Forrest Gump, when he's running and then he stops and there's all those people behind him. He's like, I'm kind of tired. I'll go home. That backdrop was something that I saw all the time. So we traveled back and forth from that area. But so it was a different experience. It was definitely
Hmm.
culturally a different experience. And then I have a lot of friends from that and grew from that. But I never thought that I would slowly kind of move into the position I'm in right now. I think I I think most people don't expect that. It's kind of life kind of moves them in a certain direction.
Hmm.
I worked for UPS for a while. I worked, again, like you said, a lot of blue collar jobs, but I think that was where I had a connection with a lot of people that were, just hard workers, and that's what they would do. They just work, work, work.
Hmm.
Um,
So no,
and
the blue collar jobs were while you were studying at USU. Is that right, or Utah State University?
yes, yeah. So a little bit of both. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So there was a lot of that, but I think that the biggest thing with kind of the transition out of when I finished my schooling, and the funny thing is my degree is in English literature. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. But I guess the research part is the good thing. But when I started working at National Benefits Services, which is a third party administrator for 401k plans, that's where I think it opened up something completely different for me as far as
Hmm.
what retirement savings plans are and how they apply for businesses.
So
Um,
yeah, let's dive in. So you're USU. You studying? You said it was an English major. Is that right? through
Well, no,
English literature?
I started computer engineering, and then I ended up dropping that and going into English literature. I couldn't tell you why, but I do love reading and research. So maybe that was
So is
maybe
it
not
when
the
you
best out.
graduated, was it a sense of, hey, I'll apply to as many jobs as as I think that I might be able to get in a scatter shot and happen to be national benefits? Or is that what you came out and you knew you wanted to do? Or how did you land at
Well,
the initial company?
yeah, I don't think I was really set on what most people saying. What are you going to teach? That's what they usually say. Are you going to teach? I had already kind of lined up my job with National Benefit Services right as I was finishing school. So it
Hmm.
was kind of the transition from the blue collar into doing this. And um,
So
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
going to press it
it was
just
good.
how did you apply? How did you line up the job? So I'm just because it doesn't seem
Oh,
like it's a typical
it
job.
was one of those things where it's like, okay, I've been working blue collar. I need to go into the white collar industry if I'm going
Hmm.
to do something with my degree. And so that was my gateway into it. And it
Okay.
was one of those things where it's like, yeah, I sent out probably a ton of applications, and it just kind of that was the one that fell into place and
Hmm.
worked for what I was doing. So, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought there was so much to be learned from it while being there. And so yeah,
No,
it
makes
wasn't
sense.
it wasn't some like Cinderella story where it's like suddenly I just finished school and stumbled into this and saw this and was like, oh, my life has changed. It was more like you have to work your butt off while you're in there and keep going through that. And
Hmm.
that's kind of where it went with NBS. So
All right, so you worked, and that's I don't think is atypical. You're graduating. You're saying I don't have not living on student loans anymore. I have to get a job. Life
mhm,
costs money. So what am I going to do? And you go and you apply to the jobs that you think you're qualified for or reasonably interested in, and then they come
mhm,
back and you choose from the ones that you look like or that line up well. So you did
yeah.
that for a period of time. Started working with them. Sounds like it was overall a good experience. And then I think you said you moved over to Transamerica next. Is that right?
Yeah, so I moved over to Transamerica, and that was kind of it was something that came up where because my expertise while I was there at NBS was in a certain field
Hmm.
within 401ks, and so they seek out certain kind of niches within the industry, and so that I filled that niche. But that's really where there was kind of a transition that was there,
Hmm.
and I had already been introduced to some people about uh, starting something very interesting. So that was kind of where that moved in from there. While I was at Transamerica, I was unable to do any consulting, anything like that outside of working there for what I was wanting to do with 401 Go. And 401 Go is the company that, um, I have partners we co-founded and came together and put that together. So
Okay. So now you do that, you go and work, you get the experience in Transamerica. Now, kind of, or how did you then get from that to deciding you're going to do 401 Go and do your own thing and start, or, do your own kind of business and startup? What prompted that transition or that startup?
well, that was more of there was some consulting that happened kind of
Hmm.
outside of that where we had gone through what it was kind of ethereal at first. You're thinking about, well, what can we do? And let me just kind of tap into a couple of things. Working blue collar jobs and working with people like that and working at NBS, you start to see a trend with these smaller businesses
Hmm.
that are not getting the same features. They don't even have access to certain features, and their costs are crazy, so they end up they don't do anything. And so um, when you look at even the numbers, it's like over 80% of these small businesses do not have a retirement savings account or a plan or anything, and it makes you think. And so there was that interaction that was really like, okay, we need to do something about that. My time at Transamerica was just it was a good experience, but I wouldn't say it was anything that kind of like, oh, well, this is how I do it. It was more of, okay, look, there's something that we need to build out. It needs to happen this way. And so when I left Transamerica to do this full time and put this together with my partners and everyone else that's put into it, it was very thought out. Like, how are we going to help these small businesses
Hmm.
have some sort of offering for retirement?
Hmm. So now, did you start, 401 Go, did you start that on your own? Did you have business partners? What was kind of that genesis, or how did you get involved with it, or how did you get that going?
So I had been in kind of a consulting role, kind of
Mm,
outside of all that, just consulting on basic 401k information. And so I do have some partners that are involved, and that we all co-founded this and put it together. But our CTO is I mean, his background is in automation,
mm,
automating like retail, e-commerce, and putting that sort of thing together. And what he did is he took that same concept and he applied it to the 401k, which is typically a process where it's like, here's a form, fill out the form. Is that what you want? And there's this back and forth, and weeks of time before anything happens. And so um, through what he was able to build as far as the consulting, and how do you need to set this up to make this work. That's kind of where this was born out of, where you take the concept of, can you automate a 401k plan, and the answer is yes. And so that's where 401 Go is. It's an automated 401k plan. So there was a lot of thought into it, back and forth, just on the basics of a 401k, and then
mm.
what a small business owner would typically want or need. So yeah.
Okay. So you started out as consultant. Now you started out as consulting, kind of figured out what startup small businesses need and how they might provide that as a benefit to their employees. So now, is this something that you continue to do on the side? Did you jump in full time? What was that
Yeah,
transition
I'm
like?
full time. I came
Mm,
in as soon as I left Transamerica's full time. I came into it, and really, I mean, we've seen just incredible growth from that. So coming into it, looking at what's been built, even kind of tailoring some of those things, improving some of those things, and then
mm,
working the line of partnerships. We just found that there's so much interest for this and so much need
mm,
that that's where it came in. I came into this full time to do it, because I want to see everyone getting ready for retirement, something happening for them, at least having something set up. So you have like 401 Go is synonymous with a small business 401k. That's the end goal. So
Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. Now, so you left Transamerica, said, okay, I'm all in with 401 Go, going to make this a success, going to, take the market by storm. Was it, all roses and everything went perfectly as you left? Was it hey, this is a slog for a period of time? Was it ups and downs, or kind of how did that go as you jumped over?
yeah, I would say, anything, if anyone tells you that it's all roses, they're lying. Like,
Mm,
and if you think it's all roses, then you probably need to have a reality check, because I mean, it isn't, and there are some really difficult moments. But that's the biggest thing here, and I like to follow the philosophy that, if you're persistent at something, you keep working at that thing, you'll get somewhere. And I think it regardless of how intelligent you are or how capable you are, if you are
mm,
not persistent, you will get nowhere. And so it isn't just all roses. It's taken a lot of work. There's been a lot of stressful, difficult moments throughout that. But and the way I put this is, it's incredibly difficult to make something very easy to use
mm,
and simple for people to use. So you always have to adjust and improve to make it even better as you
mm.
go about it. And that's based off of like user experience and stuff. So
So now walk me through a little bit more of what is those. I mean, what the temptation is as a startup or a small business, or as you get going and you finally get success, is you tend to just hit on the highlight reels, right? Everybody gets to hear, oh yeah, it was a little bit difficult, or there was a few things, but we figured it out, and now we're a raging success. So dive in a bit. So what was that? Was it difficulty from how do we find customers, to how do we make this affordable, to make it, you mentioned a little bit of user experience, but what were those difficulties, and did they all come up front, or did you initially have a great product you release and then it was making it better? Kind of what was that part of the journey?
so I mean, our product is amazing, but you could have an amazing product that you have no clients for. So I think
Mm,
when you go through that, you have to evaluate what is what's working. So you do have to have a time of looking at your product and kind of as you're moving to market, you need to look at what is working and why is it working, and constantly reassess that and see. And so sometimes you could be really just nailing on one point and then find that it's not working for you. And that's where you need to always have that data in front of you and be
Mm,
aware of it, and then kind of find what route is best. And we have found that partnerships, partner channels has been the best method for us as far as getting to those small businesses. I mean,
mm,
there's always organic growth, but in our situation, it might not be the same for everyone else. But partnership channels, if you have a really good partner, I mean, it can help you
mm,
dramatically in where you need to go. And even on the side, I mean, you could have organic growth that's happening while that is going on. But we found the focus on partners, which, like financial advisors, CPAs, and um, payroll companies has been, or and also PEOs, but we found that those type of
mm.
partnerships have been very, very helpful because they are looking for solutions for their clients that aren't out there. So I would just say if anyone else is looking at that or addressing that with their business, that if something isn't working, don't try to make it work.
So,
Like it,
so I'm going to dive in. How did you find out what didn't work for you? Right. So, what was that trial and error, or what did you do? And or I'll back up. What were some of the things that didn't work for you, and how did you identify them?
well, some of the things that weren't working where we were trying to go about this as very, very much direct to market. I mean, we had our partnership channel, but we were focused on the direct to market more than the partnership channel, which we
Mm,
already had that built ready to go. And we started to see that even doing that takes a lot of time, and that takes a lot of effort to go into that. And we found that out by, you can see relative to the numbers where our partnership channel, which we hadn't focused on as much, was
mm,
growing and it
mm,
was it was producing while we were spending the time on the direct to market. And so there are a number of different ways you can approach it, but when you see something that's working, and even if you just put a little bit into it and you
mm.
start to see that growth, that's where you're like, okay, you found what needs to happen. I just think sometimes um, you have to consider how far your dollars go, because if you are putting money into something, you don't get that back if it is, a marketing thing. So whatever way you can get results
Mm,
without spending a whole bunch of money on it is probably the route to go, right? And so
mm.
yeah, it is. There's not an exact science, unfortunately. I wish I had that code that I could just give someone and they they'd be good to go, right? So
Mm.
yeah.
So now you finally figure things out, you get things going, get it up and running. And what remind me, what was when was it that you originally started, or what was the founding date, so to speak?
So original founding was 2017.
Hmm.
And that was coming together, getting things going. Uh, the release to market, where we had some beta clients, but release to market was 2019. So,
So you launched 2019, been in business for a year and a half, year and a half, 2 years, somewhere in there. So how did, so now you take that, you've, started figuring out what has worked, what doesn't work, lessons learned, and those type of things.
mhm.
Where do you see the next 6 to 12 months going for you guys? What's the trajectory, and what's the plan?
Yeah, I would say one of the big things that we see happening is because we have, again, we're focused on these partnerships, and so we have connected with some bigger payroll providers where we have
Mm,
a full integration with them. We've also worked with some of the other partners that we have in a way where we're hitting the market in different ways. So we project, I mean, just without giving you like the hard numbers, right?
mm,
Um, with something with just one of these partnerships, we're already going to see, I would say, um, tens of thousands of dollars of revenue that come through one of these partners, and we have multiple that we're really
mm,
pushing out. Um, and so, I mean, I see that. I see us just continually growing through those partnerships, but we also have other products that we're looking to funnel through that partnership channel, like an IRA, an investment HSA. So we're looking at building out that automation that we've already built out for the small
Mm,
business, so they have more features to go through. And when you have a partnership channel that's already established, I mean, as you add more things into that channel, that's where you see quite a bit of growth. So I just I can already see us growing
mm.
substantially through those partnerships that have already been finalized or are already in the process of being finalized.
Okay, no, I think that sounds like a great trajectory to be on and a great place to head. So now as you do that, as we get towards the end of the podcast, I always have two questions I ask at the end, so we'll jump to those now.
Okay.
So we hit on them maybe slightly, at least the first one a little bit, but we'll dive into it a bit more. So the first question I always ask is, within your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Um, well, within that, I would say maybe outside of 401 Go, I've had some. There's a number of ones where I've probably put too much money into something that wasn't well thought out. Without giving any names on it, I'll just say,
Hmm.
just be careful about how much you're putting into a business that hasn't, you haven't looked at all angles of it. And if you put so much money into it, you can't get back. Um, yeah, if you can't grind and get something back for that, just evaluate those decisions. So prior to 401 Go, I've had some of those moments where, thinking this is the greatest thing, and then, my wife would probably she'd definitely argue with me on that. So yeah, probably a few years before even 401 Go, there were some opportunities that come up, and um, yeah, I probably should have evaluated them better, but bad business decisions based off of that. But
Hmm. All right. No, and I think that one's, hey, it's more common you think that one, sometimes the temptation is when you're going to make an investment, hey, this is too good to be, almost as too good to be true, but you invest in something that you don't know or you can't add value or you didn't do your due diligence, your homework on, and that can turn out, less than optimal in that, or you can get into a partnership with people. And I think that you have to look into a partnership, not that different from a marriage in the sense you're going to be working with this person a lot of
yeah,
time. You're going to be spending a lot of days, and if everybody's working hard, it works out great. If you only have one person that's working hard and the other person you get frustrated or it doesn't feel like you're equally
yeah,
pulling it, there's all those things. So I think when you're looking at an investment opportunity, you're doing things, to your point, you almost need to look and see, okay, is this one, do I know enough about this industry, or can I come up to speed or learn before I put the money in? Two,
yeah,
can I add value in the project? And then three is, who am I getting in bed with? And all of
yeah,
those can make the difference between it being a successful venture and one where you're continually frustrated.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. Yeah,
So,
and that's how
oh,
you learn, though. I mean,
mhm.
unfortunately, some people learn the hard way, and yeah,
There's
so
always lessons to be learned, and sometimes you get to pay more tax on to learn those lessons than others. So,
yeah, exactly.
excuse me. Now, as we jump to maybe the second question, which is, so if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Um, I I think that, and this is the advice I kind of give to myself is, um, it's about persistence. So, and I actually think it was Ryan Smith with Qualtrics. He said the same thing about, like, be all in.
Hmm.
So if you're doing this, be all in, all the way, but also be persistent in what you're doing. And if you do run into some roadblocks and they're legitimate roadblocks,
Hmm.
evaluate that. Maybe you're not on the right course, and maybe you need to make some adjustments. And however that happens, um, yeah, just keep at it. Keep at it. And if it is something that is legitimately a great thing that will help whatever market you're in or industry, then you'll see results. But that persistence has to be there, and you have to be all in.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think it's one where, sometimes people dream of being in a startup or a small business, and then they get there and then they're not all in, or they have hesitations, or they're only, halfway in, halfway out. And it always is so difficult to do that. And yet, on the other hand, I'll give them a little bit of slack. It's hard to know when to be all in, or when you have that, the boat close enough to the dock that you can jump over into the boat as opposed to landing in the water. So, but I think
Right.
once you make that decision, you need to be all in. Then there isn't, there shouldn't be a looking back, or, doing something else, because it will just distract you from building the business. So I think that's great advice.
Right.
Well, as people want to, they want to find out more about 401 Go, they want to connect with you, they want to be a client, they want to be an investor, they want to be a new employee, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to find out more or connect with you?
So they can go to 401go.com, or they can email me directly at jared@401go.com. That's JARED at 401go.com. Or I think that's probably the best way. I don't want to give out too many of the numbers.
All right, no, that works.
Best ways. Yeah.
Yep. Check out the website or email you directly, and they can hit you up and connect for any or all of the above.
Yeah.
Well, been fun to have you on, Jared. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, that you have a journey that you want to tell, feel free to apply to be on the podcast at inventivejourneyguest.com. We'd always love to hear your journeys. If you're a listener, make sure to click subscribe so you get notifications as all of our awesome episodes come out. And last but not least, if you ever need help with patents and trademarks, feel free to reach out to us at Miller IP Law, and we're always here to help. Thanks again, Jared. It's been a pleasure, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Devin.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of The Inventive Journey, make sure to go and check out Startups Magazine. They're an awesome magazine and podcast centered over in the UK. And if the magazine is a digital and print magazine where they focus on tech startups and entrepreneurs, and they also have a focus on female founders and women in tech. So if you want to check out their magazine, either digital or print, it's Startups Magazine, startups with an S, magazine.co.uk. And you can also look up their podcast, which is called The Serial Entrepreneur. So go check them out. They're awesome, and definitely if you like this episode, you'll like them.